On March 25, 2026, a jury in Los Angeles reached a verdict that Silicon Valley had spent 2 decades making sure would never happen. They ordered Meta to pay $6 million in damages, roughly what the company earns in 4 minutes. That number is not the story. The story is what it unlocks. Outside the courthouse, parents who had traveled from across the country broke down in tears. One had lost her daughter to fentanyl she bought from someone she met on Instagram. They had been saying for years that something was wrong. After 40 hours of deliberations, 12 jurors agreed. Today's verdict is a historic moment for Kaylee and for the thousands of children and families who have been waiting for this day. Meta's response: "We respectfully disagree and will appeal." They've been saying that sentence for 20 years. This is the story of how Instagram was built to hook children, how Meta knew it was causing harm, and how for 20 years, nobody could make them stop. To understand the verdict, you need to understand what Instagram actually is. On October 6, 2010, 2 Stanford graduates launched a photo-sharing app. It was simple: a photo, a filter, share it with your friends, nothing more. In the first 10 weeks, it had 1 million users. No marketing budget, no ads, just word of mouth. 18 months after launch, Zuckerberg called with an offer: $1 billion for an app with 13 employees and no revenue. The tech industry thought he'd lost his mind. In hindsight, it was the greatest acquisition in Silicon Valley history. Today, Instagram has over 3 billion monthly active users. It generates more than $50 billion in advertising revenue every year. It is, by itself, more valuable than most Fortune 500 companies, and it all runs on a single engine. The longer you look, the more money Meta makes. That works perfectly on adults. The problem was what it did to children, because by 2015, Meta's own researchers had found something alarming, something that would take another decade to become public. Instagram was 4 times more likely to bring back an 11-year-old than any competing app. Not twice, 4 times. That statistic was in a document inside Meta with that exact number, and the strategic conclusion their own team drew from it: if we want to win big with teens, we must bring them in as tweens. Before we go further, it's worth understanding the logic inside Meta, because it wasn't irrational, it was ruthlessly consistent. Teenagers are the future. The users you acquire at 13 are the users you keep at 23 and 33. If Instagram loses the teenage generation to a competitor, it loses everything. And teenagers weren't coming to Instagram by accident. They were building their entire social lives inside it. From a pure business standpoint, there was no decision to make. You optimize for what works. The problem is, what works means when the product is built the way Instagram is built. Infinite scroll, algorithmic feeds, unpredictable reward cycles, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive, beauty filters that manipulate how you see yourself, likes that create public feedback loops on how attractive you are to strangers. These features don't just hold attention, they exploit psychology. They trigger the same dopamine systems that govern addiction, and they work most powerfully on brains that are still developing, specifically the brains of children. Meta knew this. In 2019 and 2020, their own researchers studied Instagram's effect on teenage girls. 32% said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. One internal slide recorded direct feedback from teen focus groups. Teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. That sentence was written by Meta's own researchers in Meta's own documents, and then it was filed away. By 2021, internal employees were writing memos comparing the platform's effect on young users to pushing drugs and gambling. Then, in October 2021, a former Facebook employee named Frances Haugen walked into the Wall Street Journal with a hard drive containing thousands of internal documents, everything Meta had known and hidden. The world called it the Facebook Papers. Congress summoned Zuckerberg, regulators opened investigations, families filed lawsuits, and Meta, consistently publicly on the record, maintained that the science didn't prove a connection between Instagram and harm to children. In 2024, Zuckerberg told Congress, "The existing body of scientific work has not shown a link between social media and worse mental health outcomes for young people." 14 months later, he was standing in front of a jury in Los Angeles, watching lawyers unroll a 35-foot wide collage of hundreds of selfies posted to Instagram by a girl who had started using the platform at 9 years old. Her name was Kaylee. The evidence against Meta was substantial. Internal documents showed that as of 2015, Meta knew more than 4 million users under the age of 13 were on Instagram. That's 30% of every 10 to 12-year-old in the United States. On a platform with a minimum age of 13, Kaylee had started using it at 9. On some days, her lawyer said, she was on Instagram for more than 16 hours in a single day. She developed depression, body dysmorphia, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Her mother had tried to stop it. The app was designed to resist that. The jury deliberated for over 40 hours. They found Meta negligent in design. They found Meta had known its platform posed dangers to minors and failed to warn users. They awarded $3 million in compensatory damages and $3 million in punitive damages, a finding that required them to conclude Meta had acted with malice, oppression, or fraud. The same day, a separate jury in New Mexico ordered Meta to pay $375 million for failing to protect children on its platforms. 2 verdicts, 2 days. Over 2,300 similar cases are now waiting in federal court, each one using this verdict as a blueprint. The tobacco industry comparison is everywhere in the legal commentary, and it's accurate. Tobacco companies spent decades telling the public that the science wasn't settled, that addiction was a personal choice. And then the documents came out and proved they had known all along. In 2021, Frances Haugen handed those documents to the world. In 2026, a jury used them. The structural parallel is not a metaphor, it is a legal playbook, and both sides know exactly what it means. So that is the story, and it comes down to 3 things. First, Meta optimized for engagement and called it neutral. The infinite scroll, the algorithmic feed, the unpredictable rewards, these weren't accidents. They were engineered by behavioral psychologists for one metric: time on platform. When a company says it's just giving users what they want, the question worth asking is, who designed the wanting? Second, Meta treated its own research as a liability, not an obligation. The studies existed, the findings were clear, and whenever the question arose publicly, Meta's answer was that the science wasn't settled. But it wasn't science they were hiding. It was evidence. Frances Haugen found it. Third, Meta built a wall around itself, and it was walked around. For 30 years, Section 230 shielded tech companies from liability for what users posted. The Los Angeles case bypassed it entirely, not by targeting content, but by targeting design. That is the legal shift that changes everything. The thousands of cases now waiting in federal court will determine how far it goes. The tobacco industry spent decades telling smokers their habit was a personal choice. Mark Zuckerberg spent 20 years telling parents the same thing about their children's phones. In 2026, a jury in Los Angeles disagreed, and 2,300 families are watching very carefully to see if that disagreement holds. Meta says it will appeal. Thousands of cases are waiting. Do you think $6 million changes anything? Or does it take a number with more zeros to make a company this size actually change? Let me know below.